Hello, and welcome to Commander Snake. Today's episode, we'll be going through part two of my personal commander collection. First up today, we have Brutaclad. This guy looks to make big copies of creatures through Desolation Twin that will then you play Thopter Assembly that makes 5 Thopters, and then use Brutaclad's ability to turn those Thopters into 10/10 Eldrazi. It's quite overwhelming. It's interesting. Next up is Mishra, Eminent One. This deck looks to get ATBs of vehicles through Mishra's ability. The Reaver Titan, so you can do 5 damage to the entire table when it ETBs, and Portals to New Phyrexian, so they had to sacrifice creatures when it ETBs. It's a bit oppressive, true. Next up, we have Derevi, Scrap Servant. Speaking of oppressive, this deck uses Blood Moon, uses Mages of the Moon, uses Winter Orb, and then looks to try to kill the table with a Worm Coil Engine. Eventually, this deck is not very fun to play against. Next up is Krinko Mob Boss. This is goblins and using Krinko to make more goblins, and then have Proferos out or overrunning the field with Shared Animosity. Next up, we have the Mimeoplasm. This guy looks to mill most of your deck into the graveyard, and then hopefully you'll have some combination of creatures like a Skithirex, the Blight Dragon, and something to make him unblockable, and then one-shot somebody for Infect, or he'll be big enough to do 21 commander damage pretty easily as well. Next up is Sephiroth of the Hidden Ways. This guy is about dredging through all the dungeons and then using reanimate effects like himself to reanimate Kukusho, sacrifice Kukusho with Ashnod's Altar or whatever you have to sacrifice out with, and then bring him back with his ability and drain the table for 5. Next up is Marath, Will of the Wild. This is my Enrage deck. It's about playing the dinosaurs with Enrage, using Marath to shoot the dinosaur to get the effect of it, usually a 1/1 counter or gain life, and then putting the 1/1 counter back on Marath and doing it again. Next up is Derevi, Imperial Tactician. This is my Hate Bear deck. Hate Bears are little 2/2 creatures with small casting costs that hate on what your opponents are trying to do. And then you getting enough Hate Bears on the field and then overrunning them with Overrun or Crater Hoof Behemoth. Next up is Nethroi, Apex of Death. This guy uses his mutate and all the mutates in Azban colors. All the mutates, and then having a Hexproof creature so you can mutate onto them without worry of your creature dying. And then we use Nethroi to try to win when you have a Mikaeus and Triskelion in the graveyard. Next up is Brea, Ethereum Shaper. She has a lot of combos in her. She's a combo piece by herself. You just need Ashnod's Altar and Nim Death Mantle, and she'll go infinite and kill the entire table all by herself. It's crazy. Next up, we have Corvo, Fey Cursed King. This is becoming one of my favorite decks again. I used to have it run Shadowborn Apostles, and then I switched it up to Treasures, because treasure sacrifice, and then when you sacrifice things, Corvo's ability happens. And treasures are treasures. Next up, we have Verenia Lich Queen. This is zombie tribals, and then trying to put all the zombies in the graveyard to bring them back, and hopefully having a zombie in play that when they come into play does a damage to you, does a damage to opponents, and then when they die, does a damage. It's aristocrat thing, I guess you'd call that. Next up is Clouth, Unrivaled Ancient. This guy is a dragon deck. Uses big dragons, Ancient Carper Dragon, and old Gnawbones to make more mana. And then through that mana, you either cast more creatures or X spells like Crackling with Power and destroy the entire table. Next up, we have Prosper, Tombbound. This guy is about creating as many exile piles as you can, many different exile piles as you can, and using him to get treasure when you play something from exile. And just, it's quite dirtily, really. Next up is Niv Mizzet Perun. This deck looks to draw as many cards as you possibly can, and drawn into an empty deck with a lab man effect on the field. Also runs Curiosity, Tandem Lookout, and lots of counterspells. Next up is Lathril, Blade of Elves. This is an elf ball tribal deck that also wants to use Lathril's ability to tap down herself and 10 elves and then untap them with Vitalize and cards like that to use her ability again. Seaborn Muse to use it every single turn. Next up is the Gitrog monster. This guy is going to require his own video all by himself. It's a bit of a complicated deck to run. It uses Darkmouth Savage loops, and then Ulamog to shuffle your library into your deck, your graveyard into your deck, and use draw effects. The win condition is either Finale of Devastation or Ebony Charm, and I'll make a deck tech describing more of this guy. All right, let's stop the video there, and I'll upload the next one very shortly. And thank you for watching my video. I appreciate it. And please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Commander Snake.